NVIDIA Omniverse has rich support for USD, a scene description language for 3D models. In this episode, I talk about how to get the free version installed on your own computer. So I'm not going to repeat all the instructions for installing Omniverse. I'm just going to point you in the right direction. And this is partly because they might update the documentation and make this video out of date. So what I normally do is I go to Google search for Omniverse installation guide, and probably come up with the first hit. So there is multiple landing pages for the download, but this one, there's two editions of Omniverse. There is a standard version, which is free for a small number of users, and there's an enterprise edition, which is really intended for larger companies. So I'm going to follow the installation instructions for standard. There's the Omniverse launcher. That's the main program you need to install. Once you've got that, that's how you launch all the other applications. It's also how you download most of the applications. And so we're going to go through. It's going to ask you to register when you click the download free. You can compare the features, but basically you click download free. It'll ask you to register for various information, and it's pretty straightforward, really. After you've got that, you've got going to follow installing the launcher instructions, and there's documentation. I'm not going to run through it all. Now, one thing I will point out is I had some problems when I gave it path names with the space. There was one or two apps that didn't work with the path name, with the space in the path name, and so I've created a d:\Omniverse, and I've put everything underneath there just to get rid of all the spaces in the path names. They may fix that in the future, but it just avoids a little bit of problems. I've already got the launcher installed, so just to run through it quickly, there's a number of tabs across the top. News gives you the latest news on the product. Library, you'll be using a lot because that's how you actually pick the application you want to launch. It also gives you information about the different applications, such as how much memory it needs. Exchange is how you can find new applications that you haven't got already installed. And so you can expand out. There's some like collections. The apps is where most of the programs are that you might want to install. And then content has got some demo content if you actually want to get some models and stuff to play with. Nucleus is really for enterprise users. You can try it out on your own desktop, but it sets up a Nucleus server so you can actually have a remote file shared server and collaborate with other users, and you actually get to see each other's changes live. I'm not using that. And then Learn gives you access to the videos, but I just go off and do a Google search. So it's really Exchange where you're going to try and search for a particular application. And so Code is one of the applications, and it gives me a button, and then I can go off and install it. Now I've actually already got it installed, but that's how you would go off and find it to install. So it's pretty straightforward. Once you go into the library, if I wanted to launch Create, you basically click on it, and there's a launch button up here in the top corner. So we're just going to click on that. Now, it takes a while to start up, so you just need to wait and be patient. Now, the other thing that we want to talk about is the hardware requirements. Now, Omniverse is from NVIDIA. You've got to have an NVIDIA GPU, and you probably want a fairly recent one to make it work fast enough. The other thing is you'll need a reasonable amount of memory. If we have a look at down this app, for example, it's saying Create, it needs a minimum of 16 gigabytes of RAM. It recommends 32 gigabytes. And the other thing you need is disk space and a good internet connection, because the downloads are big. I started off making a bit of a joke saying, oh, you just need 10 gigs. Maybe 100 gigs is safer. Actually, I'd go with a terabyte, and I thought I was being so clever. And then I started looking at some of the requirements, and the minimum recommendation is half a terabyte of SSD disk straight up front. Now, you don't really have to have that, but it really does go through the disk space. So you really want to have a lot of space available. You want to have a fairly modern GPU to get the performance out of it. and you want a good internet connection because you're going to be downloading a whole heap of big files. So yeah, you need them all. But if you've got it, it really is quite good to play with and explore. So that's the end of the installation guides. It's pretty straightforward. Create is the main program I'm going to be using this series. There is a copy of Blender, and the benefit of using this copy of Blender, if you're a Blender user, is it's got an NVIDIA extension plugged into it for exporting things in the USD format to load up in scenes, and it works a bit better. But we're going to try some of these other various applications, but for a little while, because this course is going to focus on USD, I'll be working in Create. Now, one thing to watch out for Create, there's a new version coming out very shortly, and so most people who see this video is probably going to see it as USD Composer, because they're just going through the process of renaming it. But for me, it's called Create at the moment. USD Composer might be the name in about a month's time. I'm just guessing that, by the way. Okay, that's all for this installation episode. Pretty straightforward. Next episode, we're going to start getting into the actual semantics and the jargon of USD. See you then.